Super Rugby with Nurofen available at Chemist Warehouse. We're going to start off at Leichhardt Oval because something special happened. The Waratahs couldn't win a game last season and they go over and they beat the Crusaders. JK, no one picked this. What happened?
No one picked it. The Crusaders are starting slow. They're traditionally really good starters. They put pressure on the start of the game. They've been starting slow all year. But I also think the Waratahs have been building. You know, when you listen to them after the game, when you listen to them talk, they're saying, we're building a family. You know, you can see the culture starting to turn around. And I think they played out of themselves, really, Mills.
Oh, they had the perfect start, didn't they? I mean, 17 odd points up. I mean, they've got some good young talent too, some real superstars that sort of can make breaks from anywhere. Then it was really that factor, you know, that what they're building. You know, the fact they're building that culture to absolutely bring it home. I'm with you, JK. The Crusaders are starting slow, but I think all of the New Zealand teams just look like they're just a little bit sort of, you know, flat-footed. They're not as excited as what we sort of have seen in the past, and it's almost as if the Australian teams have come out and really motivated. They're refreshed, and they can't wait to get into us.
So there was a team last year in New Zealand, the Chiefs, had a really difficult start to their season. They went 0-8, and it was well documented. This team was struggling last year. They were young, inexperienced. They've got some players into their environment, made a huge difference. Michael Hooper in that environment has led them from the front. He is a world-class leader and player. But two words, Richie Mo'unga was not playing in this game for the Crusaders. Look, he is their talisman. He is their best player. He has been multiple times Super Rugby Player of the Year. So when you take a key player, a key piece of your puzzle out of it, your first five, you don't win this competition without a world-class first five. It is proven over time in history. So I don't read anything into this result other than the fact they've now lost control of their destiny, particularly about controlling playing at home in the playoffs. So for me, Scott Robinson's got some things that he'll want to deal with, but in the end, his best player, his most influential player, was not playing because he was on rest duties. It was time to him have a week off. Well, let's not go into that, and it's a whole nother show. But bottom line...
He wants to.
What's that?
Do you want to go into it?
Oh, well, bottom line, I'll tell you what, Adi
think...
Savia is due for a rest. He's played every game.
Are you saying to me, though, that they look like a championship side, a champion-winning side, like years have passed, and they're just missing Mo'unga? I don't agree.
They've been dominant up until, I think, this year. Last year they showed signs. They're still very, very good through Super Rugby Aotearoa. But bottom line, I think the gap is closed across the board. The Australian teams have come back. And I think, Mills, I look at the influence now that Dave Rennie has had in the 18 months that he's had the job, and I see it start to filter through. They are looking more and more like a team that's got someone over the top of them giving them all the information they need to know. When he left New Zealand, he's given Australia an opportunity to close the gap, and now everybody, their coaches included over there, have a better understanding how to play against New Zealand teams.
I 100% agree with that. They look at totally different sort of sides. I mean, I still agree with the fact that they possibly need to lose a side to bring the majority of that sort of talent in, but I think the way they're playing similar to what we have. They've almost evolved in those couple of years that Rennes has been over there, whereas what worries me a bit now is sort of where have we gone? We haven't changed, you know, too much. The gap's closing. We look really flat. And if I compare it to sort of our end-of-year tour, we almost look like, you know, our teams look like that in some way.
Well, Jeff, you asked the question, when was the last time an Australian team or two Australian teams beat two New Zealand teams on one weekend? Our fantastic producer, Jim, he's dug into the archives. 2014 was the last time.
8 years ago.
8 years ago.
8 years ago. It's a significant change, and we've seen it. And if you think about comparing last year's Trans-Tasman competition to this year's competition of Super Rugby Pacific, this is what it looks like, OK? We went to Australia last year. On average, we scored 39 points a game. They scored 20 points a game. This year, in 2022, the significant difference. We are scoring 9.5 points less, and they are scoring a couple of points. So all of a sudden, the margin is just over 7, which is a converted try, which means the game is on the line when you're going to the death. So you move that on. How does that mean in terms of our attack? Where have we got to? We're not making the same line breaks. We made 9.4 last year, just 6 on average a game. Those are try-scoring opportunities that aren't there. They have improved their attack all of a sudden. 1.2 over another line break per game this season. So all of a sudden, that's why the gap is closing. They've got some development they've made in their game in terms of the defence and attack, and then average tackles missed per game. 26 they were missing last year. It's under 20. We're also now missing less tackles this season. Different nature of the competition because we chased bonus points last year, trying to make it into a final one round. But I think that's where I see the difference. We talked about it last week, guys, didn't we? The fact that, bottom line, JK, defence is winning the day, the gap is closed. That's why these teams are getting nearer and nearer to winning, I think, on a more consistent basis. Hence, we've got a great competition in front of us over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic for the competition. The renewed competition from the Australian side, I think, makes it way more exciting. I still think there's the yellow and red card issue that unless the players start sorting that out, I mean, there's another silly one in the Hurricanes game today. That could be really costly as you head towards the final. So I think the competition's good. Mils, it's got to... I mean, I hope we all win, New Zealand sides, but we want the winning and losing during the competition. Makes a better spectacle.
Yeah, it certainly does. And the fact that, I mean, you know, we're probably a little bit more surprised at how fast the Australians have actually adapted and closed that gap a lot earlier than what we had. But what does it make? It makes it fantastic competition going forward.
What was it like on the sideline? Because, you know, when we go and look at games and watch games and there, I mean, did you notice a difference in confidence around the whole arena from the players? What were you feeling?
Oh, it was definitely a different vibe. It's almost kind of like the Australians have sort of sensed that there's, you know, they've gotten better at sort of an aspect of the game, and now they're sort of growing. They've got that confidence, whereas... When our boys walked out there, it was kind of like, it was almost like status quo. You know, it's just another game. We'll get through, and there's be tough moments in some of those games too, where they've sort of they've got themselves into a really patchy spot. To get them back out of there, that's when they've sort of really struggled. So the interesting thing for me was what's going to happen when the Aussie teams come over here. You know, how are we going to sort of adapt to that? You know, are we going to sort of push on? Because we've seen in the past, once we've played the Australians a couple of times and sort of seen the way they've sort of played, you know, we tend to analyse them. Analyse the house down, and then actually, you know, they come here and we beat them convincingly.
Even games we've won have been unconvincing. I mean, the Blues' performance against the Force. I mean, you can't be in complete control of a game at half-time and then, not for the first time this season, JK, they didn't finish the job. They weren't ruthless enough. Bottom line, they were lucky to get out of this. They've been lucky in a couple of games. They were dominant for the first 40 minutes. Then all of a sudden, it's like, we'll just rely on our defence. You cannot rely on your defence for 40 minutes to get yourself into a position to win a game. They were very fortunate. The Chiefs were the same, just across the line, the Reds. I think, and this is what you know, the second Players' Cup test this year is at Eden Park. It could be for the trophy. It could be for it. And this team, the more, this country, and it's all right I'm talking about, the more games they win in this competition, the bigger belief they're going to have.
Are we, and this is something I care passionately about, are we too process-driven? And instead of emotional, I mean, I forget the young man's name, and that's bad of mine, but he's crying after the Waratahs game and running to see his family and hugging his family and all this sort of stuff. I mean, when you talk about us running out and going through process, nothing wrong with it. I don't think it's not a criticism, it's just an observation. But do we need to bring a little bit more emotion, Mils?
Yeah, emotion in the past has actually hurt us too, because we've overdone it. You know, we've overdone the emotion, we've sort of pushed the emotional buttons too much. But I think we're definitely lacking something. Maybe it's COVID, maybe there's a bit of fatigue there. But certainly at this stage, we just seem really flat. You know, is it a case where we've sort of beat each other up, you know, so many times, and then gone over there and the Australians are now refreshed?
Oh, yeah, think about the margins. It was 19 last year. 19.2 was the difference on average. It's 7.7 this year. So it just tells you, just by the raw numbers, the fact that they are closer and closer. I just look at the way that they're playing. They're playing with so much more purpose, so much more belief. This Brumbies performance today was against the Hurricanes team, which was strong. I come back to the fact, though, this Hurricanes team haven't managed to settle on their first five just yet. No Ruben Love around, which I don't think is helping them. But bottom line, the Brumbies were a better team. A much better team today, and I think it's great for the competition. Really, really is. Remarkable, really. And it gives us something, a blueprint for us to look forward to every week now. I can't wait to see the Australian teams come to New Zealand now and see whether or not they can replicate this form, because it's been impressive.